We now move over to the Middle East, where Indonesia will convert a medical facility on its currently uninhabited island of Galang to treat around 2,000 wounded residents of Gaza. As per reports, these people will return home after recovery. Indonesia plans to allocate the facility on Galang Island off its island of Sumatra and south of Singapore to treat wounded Gaza residents and temporarily shelter their families. The plan comes months after President Prabowo Subianto's offer to shelter wounded Palestinians drew criticism from Indonesia's top clerics. He was criticized for seeming too close to US President Donald Trump's suggestion of permanently moving Palestinians out of Gaza. We're now joined by Dr. Alvite Ning Thaujam. He's a Deputy Director and Assistant Professor of Symbiosis at the School of International Studies. He joins us live from Pune. Thank you very much for joining us, Dr. Ning Thaujam. What are your thoughts about this? More international involvement in the Gaza crisis. Indonesia this time offering to treat 2,000 Gazans in an island off their coast. What are your thoughts on the international intervention here from the Indo-Pacific country?
Thank you, Thomas, for having me again on your show this afternoon. You rightly pointed out that this is also a reflection of the growing calls from the international community towards Israel to improve the very dire consequences which we are seeing right now in the form of deteriorating humanitarian situation. This particular region, Indo-Pacific, or I would say some of the Southeast Asian countries have been a very vocal supporter of the Palestinian cause in the past and also in the present scenario right now. And in that, Indonesia is one of the very important countries that has been calling for the resolution of the long-standing Israeli-Palestinian issue and even supporting the two-state solution. So the act or the announcement to give about 2,000 Gaza residents some sort of a help is, of course, very symbolic, and also talks about the unwavered support given by the Indonesians towards the Palestinians in times of crisis. But having said that, Thomas, we also have seen a little bit of changes in the way how the Indonesians perceive this conflict, or particularly the Israelis in the last few years. There has been even a talk of Indonesian government normalizing relations with Israel should the Israelis be willing to accept a two-state solution. But of course, given the situation right now, things have become a little difficult, or rather very difficult, for any of the countries, particularly a nation like Indonesia, or the world's largest Muslim populated country, to take a call of that nature by going ahead with the normalization process with Israel could invite certain backlashes in the country. But coming to your larger question of Indonesia giving this sort of a medical help to the Gazans, it speaks a volume about the policy vis-a-vis Palestinian issue.
Yes, indeed. Also, Dr. Ning Thaujam, we've said that this has drawn criticism. There's been huge talks about the possibility of Palestinians being displaced from the Gaza Strip. What's your analysis of this, and also Israel's intentions in this war? We've obviously seen some of Benjamin Netanyahu's close cabinet openly advocating for this. Do you think that the caution to even a plan like this is correct about the displacement of Palestinians?
I think there is also a growing divide within the Israeli society, or the political echelons and the military leadership, about this particular operation which is going on inside Gaza Strip. You have seen the kind of differences in the way how the politicians would look at this conflict, and at the same time the military establishments are also looking at. So we can see a kind of a very subtle and at the same time some trends within the Israeli society about this prolonged conflict which is going on since October 23, and there is no end in sight to the sufferings, and also of course to this conflict. Both sides are suffering from one end. On the other side, that is on the Israeli side, you have the unresolved hostage crisis. And on the other side, the humanitarian situation is deteriorating day by day. So this in itself is a major problem. But at the same time, the differences in the outlook towards the end goal of the military and also the end goal of the politicians, I think to a large extent, stymie or kind of put the prospects for an early resolution at the back seat. So this, of course, will lead to more regional and at the same time international outcry, particularly looking at the way how the Israelis are also carrying forward their military policy inside the region. But again, this remains to be seen on what ground both the sides, that is the Hamas or the Israelis, would finally decide to have some sort of a ceasefire, looking into taking into consideration the human plight that the Gazans are facing right now.
Yes, and obviously you mentioned it there. We have reports, and Israeli media has been reporting this also, that the possibility of Israel reoccupying the entire Gaza Strip. How far do you think Israel will be willing to go in this war? And also, given all the international condemnation, we've seen sanctions on ministers, we've seen the recognition of a Palestinian state. Do you think that Israel is willing to isolate itself further and further from countries that were previously their allies?
Yeah, that is a very important dynamic at this juncture of this conflict, whether Israel is now taking all its chances or the risk to isolate itself from the international community, particularly given the importance of diplomatic recognition and acceptance of Israel as a state in the region and beyond. In the last, say, almost 7 years, in the last 5 to 6 years, period, we have seen a widespread recognition and acceptance of Israel as a state, not only in other parts of the world, but very importantly inside West Asia or the Middle Eastern region, which we have seen in the form of Abraham Accord. But in the last few weeks and months, a couple of months, the outcry or the international pressure against Israel to improve the humanitarian situation or even to scale down the intensity of the operations has been on the rise. But again, this is something, again, I keep on repeating this point that I've mentioned in your very own news channel about a week ago, that the situation is a little different from how we saw it in the 1973, post-1973 Israeli-Arab conflict, where many countries from Africa, Latin America, as well as from other parts of the world, cut off diplomatic ties with Israel and put a lot of pressure on Israel to improve to work on the Palestinian issue. But this is not the case right now, barring a couple of countries. No country has ever snapped diplomatic ties. But having said that, this in the long run could put a kind of a dent on Israel's diplomacy or political image that it tries to send out to other parts of the world. So whether the present Israeli government is willing to take that risk at the cost of its diplomatic political ties with the regional players or the international players, that remains to be seen. But the pressures are mounting. We have seen various allies from Europe, from Asia, and also from the other parts of the world calling on Israel to really, really do something about this particular crisis, which has begun in October 2023.
Dr. Ningthao Jam, thank you very much for joining us here on the programme. We now move on once again, where national security